Guess who's back? Back again. Karine's back. Tell a friend.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me. And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth. And here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is, if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you. And that is, I think, so important. So this book, Independent, it's about looking outside of boxes, not just always being in a partisan stance. And how do we move forward together in a compassionate way, in a way that really, truly cares about people? October 21st.
Well, come on, guys. Let's just be real. She's doing it for the money. She's doing it for the money, and odds are she's planning she's got a strategy, and she's gonna make a presidential run at some point and be the first black lesbian president, attempting to be the first black lesbian independent president. Has there ever been an independent president? Either way, this nonsense, this more of her bullshit that she's so used to just spewing on a regular basis, and the media backing her up with it, has it's infected so many, and some people don't even know, they don't even realize, they don't even understand. Kind of like this guy right here.
It is a dictatorship, and there's not much we can do about it right now. Let's just fucking be honest. All of these alarm bells are ringing. Federal court judge blocks this, but all this shit is still happening. Why? Where? In what type of society does that happen? A dictatorship. It's not pre-dictatorship. It's not up and coming. It's here. Real time. You know why we're seeing so much extreme shit on a day-to-day basis? Because everybody who is on board with the Trump administration that has power in the government, whether it be local, state, or federal, right? They feel so empowered now to move forward with their extreme views that they have historically had to harbor away or hide away, given the current administration or the current obstacles in the way. But now that they feel like it's the wild, wild west, that's why we see all of this extreme shit. That fucking senator just said, oh, well, everybody dies. We're going to cut Medicaid except for the eligible because, oh, everybody dies. Fuck them. Okay, then go die. Since death is just such a throw up light thing, go die. Everybody dies, go die. She doesn't want death, but when you cut Medicaid for people.
All right, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's actually extremely rich, assuming he's a Democrat, and somehow missing the message and the point of science and biology and just life in general. No one lives forever. Hell, Jesus didn't even live forever. But that's besides the point. Then you go to the extreme and say, go die. Oh, that sounds like a threat. But it makes sense. I mean, these are the same ones who are like, hail Luigi for, shooting somebody in the back because he was the CEO of United Healthcare. Oh, man. there's like another 5.5 minutes of this shit left. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it.
I have a different view. I'd like to congratulate Democrats for ridding yourselves of this untalented mediocrity. I mean, this is the most self-aggrandizing liar that has ever held this job. The White House press secretary is a sacred position, and she stood up there for years and lied through her teeth to the American people.
My friend, she's not the first.
She is the literal worst White House press secretary in my lifetime. And what she did in the last year and a half of the Biden administration, cheap fakes, the entire cover-up around the president's mental faculties, she was in the center of it.
So you think she's doing this to launder herself?
So congratulations for getting rid of this, but Democrats deserve everything they're getting here for putting her in that job in the first place.
The fact that it seems like she was in the White House for her own personal gain and not to service the American people.
I agree with you.
And part of that is Alex Thompson has some reporting that she had a publicist working for her pro bono to lift up her profile.
And talking about fakes, I mean, come on. Check out the fun bags on this one here. She was losing her mind over the fact that breakfast costs $32 in California. But much like what we see here, that's inflation. That's inflation. We're going to come back to inflation later. We'll talk about what Jerome Powell had to say. Stay locked in, guys. There's more to come. So much more to discuss. It's never ending. Speaking of fakes, check out these Instagram influencers in the wild. Cringe ASF, always fake, pretending to have some sort of argument or disagreement at the gas station, at the gas pump. Hope she gets some signups for her OnlyFans. But either way, yeah, the ultimate fake. Check out what Peter Doocy says about Biden's signature.
Looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the auto pen, something that this, I believe the Department of Justice is looking into. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
Is there any concern that this president, who won the election on a promise to fix the economy and close the border, that focusing and scrutinizing these Biden pardons is looking into the past instead of looking forward?
I think in comparison to the amount of time this president has spent on securing the border, on fixing our economy, I just read out for you an entire list of economic accomplishments. Look at the border numbers. Look at the time and effort he's divulged into solving the global conflicts abroad. It pales in comparison, but it still, nevertheless, is a very important issue. And it was a huge issue that sent the president back to this White House. The Americans saw with their own eyes a mentally incompetent president, and they want answers for that, and the president believes they should have them.
And something that just crossed, Caroline, how mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
Yeah,
Cameron.
thank you. The National
Caroline Levitt, I mean, just listen to what she just said. The president already knew where Elon Musk stood on this bill, and, you know, there you have it. Now, here's Elon. We're going to talk more about that later, but, you know, think about it, like the media, the fake news media tried to present early in this presidency that Elon was actually pulling the strings and telling President Trump what to do. And obviously we knew that wasn't the case. And this is just further proof of it. President Trump is going to do what President Trump is going to do. That's it. He is our president. He was elected and he rules with an iron fist, folks. I will tell you this right now. Things are going to get much harder here soon for folks who have no other outlet besides consuming the fake. So if you want more of what's real, then check out the links down below in the description. Until then, check out this latest breaking news. President Trump had a $1 hour, 15-minute call with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president said very strongly that he will have to respond to the recent attack by Ukraine on the airfields. Trump characterized the call as a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace.
Well, we have some breaking news. President Trump announcing he has just spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He wrote this on Truth Social. I just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. Those were those Ukrainian attacks on the airfields with the drones. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And on this, I believe that we were in agreement. President Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. It is my opinion, the president continued, that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter, and we will need a definitive answer in a very short period of time. A few interesting notes here. First, just yesterday in Istanbul, you had the Ukrainian side meet with the Russian side, and they were talking about swapping injured soldiers, but they admitted there is no immediate end of peace in sight, an immediate ceasefire. Not only that, we know that Russia is a close ally of Iran. They partner together strategically, militarily. So any assistance on that front could push Iran perhaps into an agreement. So two interesting notes there. And Ari, this all comes against the backdrop of President Trump saying, I'll know in 2 weeks whether Putin is serious. And he said that about a week and a half ago. So this development coming as he's really prodding Putin to push towards peace.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like there's going to be any prospect of peace between Ukraine and Russia. If there were, if the president had any inclination from President Putin that there was something encouraging, we'd have seen it in that Truth Social. Its absence speaks volumes. Look, I think the only way to get peace between Ukraine and Russia is for Ukraine to continue to bring the war into Russia. That strike against the 40 Russian long-range bombers was instrumental in telling the Russian people and the Russian government there's a cost to you for continuing your attacks in Ukraine. You need a stalemate in order for two parties to come to a peace terms. Right now, there's been an imbalance until this recent Ukrainian attack inside Russia. I don't know if the Ukrainians can sustain it, though. And if you're Russia, you might want to just continue to keep the attacks going because you think you can win. That's why I think this was very risky for President Trump to think he could be the peacemaker. America's strong. President Trump is strong, but we can't do everything around the world. And I think if Russia and Ukraine won't make peace, we can't do it for them.
Kaylee, interestingly, in the middle of that Truth Social, is President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. I'm sure that caught the ear of Zelensky.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing to Trump's credit is we have full confidence that both Putin and Iran, all these other countries that he's dealing with, know for a fact that Donald Trump is not messing around. I think what's happening here is Putin is deliberately testing the bounds to see how far he can push Trump, how far he can push this administration before receiving a really harsh rebuke. But Donald Trump is not messing around. And I think that these countries know that, the American people know that, and that's why they elected him to handle our foreign policy.
Yeah, and Laura, this comes against the background of the Hill. The Russia hawks are meeting today. It's a bipartisan group. It's Blumenthal and Graham about potential sanctions on Russia. You know, notably, I always point out President Trump on his watch, you did not see Putin go into sovereign territory. You did see that with his predecessor. You saw that with President Biden. There was an absence for years. So there is a respect there that could be leveraged by President Trump.
Yeah, and he's talked about that, too. You know, we didn't see the issue in the Middle East. When Donald Trump was in the White House, we didn't see an issue with Russia, in large part when he was in the White House. I interviewed last week on my show General Keith Kellogg, who is a special envoy to Russia and Ukraine. And when he was talking about the discussions that have been had, that he was privy to between these two countries, he says Ukraine is very clear on what their parameters are, where they are, and what it would take for them to come to a peace agreement. Russia is not. He said they will not actually give us any framework to use. And so I think that's the needle that President Trump is trying to thread. If there's anyone who can thread that needle, if there's anyone, to Kaylee's point, who can tell the rest of the world, I mean business, and they know he means business, it's President Donald J. Trump. And I'm still hopeful that we're going to see peace.
Keith Kellogg is the perfect person to talk to, Emily, because there's the public conversation where President Trump is broadcasting one message. The private conversation with the world leader is very, very different. And sometimes we've seen that spill over in Oval Office meetings we've covered here. But how he talks to Putin, I know from talking to Kellogg, it's going to be in a tough manner. Kellogg has stories about him picking up the phone, talking to the Taliban, to Baradar, saying, do not harm the head on an American troop. And thereafter, many, many months, not a single American troop was harmed. Those kinds of hard conversations are the hour-and-a-half ones that happen behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think we've caught glimpses of that in the public eye of exactly who the president is. He's the same off air as he is on air. And I think while that may have surprised members of the public, it doesn't surprise those who look at him with respect and value the fact that he is authentically himself in every conversation. I'm grateful that you pointed out the Ukraine point, because I think specifically that Putin apparently talked about sort of a retaliation. And I point that out that Ukraine bombed them because they were the ones that were invaded. This is an oversimplification, but it seems to me that Putin is sort of interested in an eye for an eye at every point of the way, because to your point, Putin sees Ukraine as his territory. Like nothing less than subsuming it back within his borders will suffice, because to him, that's a loss. That was a lost territory this entire time. He sees it as not sovereign. So I'm not quite sure if that approach and that perspective that Putin has is something workable on the Ukrainian side, because it's like football penalties. I mean, he's like, oh, I have to get them back for this. Wasn't it enough that you invaded? But clearly it's not. So tough road ahead. I agree that my faith is in our president to get it done if it's possible, but I think we still have a rocky road ahead.
This is also where I question President Trump's ability to influence these events, because President Putin does not care. And we, as Americans, we don't have much leverage over Russia. We're adversaries of Russia for the most part. We don't do a lot of commercial trade with Russia. So we don't have the leverage we have in other places that President Trump can use. So I think this is a lonely mission for President Trump, and he's going to quickly come to the realization Putin's not listening. America doesn't have a lot of leverage. There are other priorities for the United States around this world.
And he also said last week that something is off with Putin. Something is different about Vladimir Putin. So I'm wondering if that's playing into this as well. Maybe it's a different Vladimir Putin than he dealt with the first term in office.
Or it's the same Vladimir Putin who's always been.
And Putin, it's worth noting, I know that all eyes are on Ukraine, but he is constructing on the border of Estonia. They call that the edge of the free world, because that's where you start to get into NATO territory. Does he have designs beyond Ukraine? Let's certainly hope not, but we'll see. More outnumbered in a moment.